Hi, I'm Mark Abbott, and I'm the new Director of People at Engineers Without Borders. And before joining the national office earlier this year, I was heavily involved in our fair trade work in Vancouver. And there's a lot of really amazing work throughout our network going on right now around fair trade. And why are people so excited by fair trade, and what is the role that it plays? Well, in this miracle of a modern economy we have, with global supply chains, it's brought huge prosperity, but it's also brought a lot of inequality. And it's brought this modern economy where there's so many steps between producers and consumers. It's a modern economy where you have cocoa farmers in West Africa who spent their whole life growing cocoa and never tasted chocolate. And you have chocolate consuming Canadians who have eaten chocolate their whole life and never even seen a cocoa bean or know where it comes from. So what fair trade seeks to do within this system, within this global supply chain system, and what fair trade certification systems within it seek to do are to reestablish those links between consumers and producers so that producers can earn a fair wage, enjoy fair and safe working conditions, and work in environmentally sustainable conditions. And basically have those underlying things in place so that they can live a life of dignity. And on the other side, it's providing that information to consumers so that when they vote daily with their wallets, with their consumption choices, that they can vote and express their desires with their wallet and their purchases. So, sounds simple in theory, but it's actually extremely complex. So at each of these stages, you have multiple companies, multiple organizations involved. And normally there's actually a lot more steps between the beginning and the end of this chain. And there's also a bunch of different products. So, you have fair trade bananas, you have fair trade coffee and tea, you have fair trade chocolate, you have fair trade roses, you have fair trade soccer balls, you have handicrafts, you even have fair trade gold now. And the supply chain for each of those products is actually quite a bit different. And when you get to the part of the chain that's in Canada, there's also a bunch of other players that aren't involved directly in the steps of getting the product from the producer to the consumer, but also have a big impact. You have government at different levels. You have the media that affects consumer behavior, as does the marketing industry. You have institutional buyers like universities that play a role. And all of this in each city and in each area is a different system with its own unique peculiarities and its own unique consumer behaviors. What we see missing from this system in Canada, where our Canadian programs focus on fair trade, is voids in the nonprofit portion of the chain in Canada. So in a lot of cities, the fair trade movement isn't very progressed, and there aren't strong nonprofit voices that are actually coordinating the movement in those areas. And that's where we see a role for EWB. So we've seen a lot of success, for example, in Vancouver, where the EWB chapter there helped to launch a sister organization called Fair Trade Vancouver. So we helped incubate that organization, which is now a lasting system change in Vancouver that's helping to drive that movement. And what really helped to focus that movement was the push for fair trade towns and fair trade campuses. So it really helped to grow our understanding of the local supply chains, understanding the supply and the demand side. It's not enough to promote fair trade bananas if there's nowhere to buy them. So we got into looking at how the bananas come into the city and who the distributors were, who the various retailers were, where the bottlenecks were in that chain. And then we focused all of our steps in our coordinated campaign accordingly. So sometimes that meant talking to institutional buyers like the universities. Sometimes that meant talking to the city about its purchasing policies. Sometimes that meant media stunts that got the broad public awareness up. And with each step, we learned more and more about the local system so that our next steps could be more targeted and focused. And as that movement builds and gets smarter and more sophisticated in each city, we're also moving towards how we can coordinate it more on a national level. So with events like My Fair Valentine and Fair Trade Halloween, the EWB network is already starting to bring a shared voice between all of these local movements. So we have that bigger voice with both the national level companies and the national media so that we can really start to hit tipping points in Canada like they've seen in Europe, where the fair trade movement is a lot more advanced. So as we progress with helping in local movements across Canada, the EWB plays a role in filling this void of a nonprofit coordinating fair trade awareness. We're also looking at how we can move towards networking together all of those local movements into a Canadian fair trade network that really strengthens that national level voice and pushes us toward those tipping points. So there's going to be a lot of amazing fair trade leaders from across the network at conference who are going to be excited to talk about how we can take a systems approach to our work in each city and at each campus, and then how we can increasingly tie that all together into a coordinated national network.